take this for instance. Go back into that text. Bethlehem of Ephrathah, you're one of the little clans. The one that's going to come forth is going to rule in Israel. I'm at the end of verse 2. His origin is from ancient days. Now, in each verse that we read, there is a particular literary allegory that's inside of each one of those verses that if you compare it to the text from the Old Testament that they would have known. How many of you realize they're Jewish and they know the Torah and the law and the prophets? Probably a lot better than we do. And they would have known those stories and cross-referenced them. For instance, they would have heard, if they heard a story of a flood, their mind would go to Noah. If they hear a story of a giant falling, their mind will go to David. We do that. We do it a little slower because we're a little bit bound by historicity and literalism. Because we see all the stories as telling you what happened one move after the other. They look at them as signposts. And so we look at the story and try to figure out all the details. They're not getting lost in the details. They're letting the allegory speak. So my example of Noah and the flood, we're wanting to know where the boat is, how big it was. Could all those animals have actually survived? Could they get all that food on there? What'd they do with the waste? I mean, what happened when those animals went to the bathroom? Did they just shovel all that off the deck? Is it really feasible that they only had one door? What were the windows like? How you let the bird go and the bird come back? That's what we do with that story. What they do with that story is God provides a way out of great disaster if you'll listen and pay attention. You go, oh, well, that's way too simple. You go, oh, are you sure? Or are you sure that's not the deepest thing you've ever heard in your life? That if you'll pay attention, God will show you how to float over your stuff. And that if you'll do it as He told you to do it, you'll make it to the other side. You go, okay, well, that might be a lot deeper than how do they shovel off the dung from the lion pit? But that's what we've done. That's how we handle it. So, when you read stuff like Micah 5, I'm being humorous to try to just show you that our approach is not the same as their approach. You read stuff like Micah 5, just realize that while we're trying to figure out all the ins and outs, what's that whose origin is from old of ancient days? Does this mean they could trace Jesus' lineage back to the ancient? Don't get lost in the details. Realize you're dealing with a comparative allegory. And here's what they would have known. The book of Daniel says that when God's kingdom comes to fruition, when God becomes king over the kingdoms of the earth, what He will do is He will hand that kingdom over to the Son of Man who rides on a cloud and stands in front of the Ancient of Days. Daniel said, God's the one called the Ancient of Days. So when Micah uses the phrase, He is from the ancient of old days, their minds would have went ding, ding, ding. Micah and Daniel are talking about the same guy. Micah's talking about that one from the ancient of days who stands in front of God. This must be someone closely related to God. This must be someone who was with Him in the beginning. See how different it is as we let the Scriptures speak to the Scriptures. This is also why Bible study is so vital. That's why we got to take a look at more than just the verse of the day. Verse of the day is nice, but you don't just live on a little protein bar. You know, there's going to have to be a meal in there once in a while. That's kind of why checking out those other passages are important. So I want to connect some dots, all right? So ancient days would have got them thinking in Daniel terms. That would have got them thinking kingdom. That would have got them thinking handed over. That would have got them thinking riding on the clouds of judgment. This is why when Jesus started talking about riding on clouds, what do we do with that? Someday, look up in the sky. Someday, Jesus is going to be riding on a horse on a cloud. His audience would have went, riding on the clouds is a spiritual metaphor for the one who stands in front of God and receives the kingdom. So when Jesus says ride on the cloud, He's calling Himself the one who gets to stand in front of God and receive the kingdom. And so they would think of those things in different terms than we do. What sounds sometimes shallow, much deeper. Because there's a lot of things that go into that, all right?